Hey, Diva family. This is a short intro to episode 16. I just wanted to give you a heads up, a trigger warning. In this episode, we talk about a lot of challenging things, including suicide, domestic abuse, rape, human trafficking. It goes deep and it's a really good episode. But if that is something that is going to be difficult or uncomfortable for you, then maybe skip this episode and we'll see you for episode 17. All right. And the rest of you, thanks for listening. I so appreciate it. Hey, Diva family. Welcome to episode 16. Once again, I have found an amazing psychedelic sister for you.
Mhm.
I first met today's guest, Coltrane Lord, last year at a private reception honoring the life and work of Stan Groff. And I was excited to meet her for two reasons. The first is that she has one of the coolest names on the planet. And in person, she obviously was just as cool as her name. But more importantly, I had been given a heads up around her by another dear sister who was singing her praises and said I needed to have her on the podcast. And then voila, Coltrane appeared in my real life so I could actually get to know her. We had a great connection, which led to a long and fascinating phone call. And now here we are, and I'm very much looking forward to another fascinating conversation. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Coltrane Lord is a psychedelic integration specialist, artist healer, and foundress of Wonderland Project, a nonprofit organization that connects marginalized women who suffer PTSD due to domestic violence, rape, or sexual exploitation to trauma informed psychedelic plant medicines, care, and integration. Coltrane is interested in the intersection of spirituality and science, ancient wisdom for modern times, and how our unique perspectives can merge to elevate the soul of humanity and reverence for the planet.
Mm.
Welcome to Psychedelic Divas, Coltrane. It is a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here, Carla. It's what a gift that you are offering to the world, the voices of women, and just giving us a platform to share our wisdom and magic. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. So I think I'd like to start with your beginning. Can you share a bit about your personal spiritual journey and how it shaped your current work in blending ancient wisdom with
Mhm.
modern healing practices?
Yes, I don't know if I should go back to the beginning, but I'll just give a little seedling of information. I grew up in a very traumatic, I guess I would say, a dysfunctional home, like many people, domestic violence and all the things that go along with that. And when I was younger, I just thought that a very oppressive religion and very unsafe parents was actually a normal thing. I thought that everyone went through that, and I had no idea that getting hit was not a thing. I just thought that people abused kids. That was the way we got punished, and I didn't realize that it didn't matter what I did or what my siblings did. We were always going to be punished for being at the wrong place at the wrong time. And so that shaped how I walked through the world, how I saw the world as a very unsafe place. And we also grew up very religious in a Catholic environment. And I'm not to judge anybody's religion, but in the way it was brought to into our home, and the contradictions and the hypocrisy, if you will, in my household, it really made me even question what is God? Who are these crazy people? And I became an atheist for a very long time. And I just went through my life thinking the world is unsafe. I've got to make my way and don't trust a soul. And I met a person, I got married, I did the whole parenting thing. And I really thought I was living a very gorgeous life that was completely different than my own upbringing. And there were many beautiful parts to it. I will say that for sure. My parents were immigrants. We had no money. And so it was a different vibe. However, when my husband at the time, after many years of marriage, had this affair, all of a sudden, boom, this reality hit me that, and not necessarily about that transgression or that affair. It was really like it hit me so hard because I didn't have actually a foundation of wholeness, a foundation of support, a foundation of something sacred and spiritual. And so my whole world went crumbling down. It also reminded me in my 20s, I had a friend who was very dear to me. And he had called me one day and said, I've had this spiritual experience. And he was the only person I talked to about spirituality, and he was bringing it back for me. And I was very like something so lit up inside me that I'm like, I'm getting back on this path. And then he called me up, said he had this spiritual experience and he was so excited about it. I was so excited for him. And then a few hours later, he jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. So that was
Oh,
a tragic moment for me, but that was also the time that I had met my then husband. And that moment it twisted me into a hypervigilant state also because I was ignoring my past. But also his spirit came to me. And this is part that this is people can argue this as something phenomenal happened to me and it's inexplainable and it was real. And that took me on a journey of near death experiences and spirituality, but on the outside. But it was the experience of betrayal and the crumbling of what I thought was real and what I thought was love and what I thought was family to actually go the deeper route and the more harder route, which is the inward journey into figuring out where my wounds lie and what part of my existence was part of it, and also what the universe is asking of me to transcend my pain and my trauma through this experience that I had. So that's where I started.
I wanna but you're gonna keep going, but I wanted to throw another little aspect in because when we talked on the phone, you said that you kn the journey from trauma to transcendence,
Mhm.
and you said it's a privilege to be on a healing journey, not just a trauma journey. So,
Mhm.
as you keep telling your story, I'd like you to weave in that difference,
Of course.
the difference
Yeah.
between a trauma and a healing journey.
Mhm. So the trauma journey, I would say, is discovering your trauma and discovering where it's at. And that's where most people go to. And they go to therapy and we discover it and we talk about it for years and years and years and years and years. And I get it already. The transcendent part is also the more difficult part because it's like being in a cocoon, right? We know our trauma, we recognize it, we go, oh, I'm a caterpillar. I remember that I'm a butterfly somehow, and I'm going to put myself in this cocoon and I'm going to disintegrate. And that's the horrible, horrific part of discovering the self. And so I had to go on a process of self discovery. I thought that at that point when I was experiencing a betrayal and my whole family life was falling apart, and I had thought I had chosen somebody opposite my father's,
Right.
and in many respects opposite, but in this respect, in honesty and trust and transparency and really trusting somebody that wasn't there. And I really thought it was my fault. And I really took that to heart and said, I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to go towards me. I'm going to get a PhD in Coltrane Lord
Okay.
and I'm going to get straight A's. And so I did that journey. And it's a painstaking journey to go and discover the self. And as I went and discovered my emotional sovereignty, my psychological sovereignty, my embodied presence, my sexual sovereignty, my sensual sovereignty, you have to dissect all those things and you have to really be honest and truthful. It's not a pretty picture. And I saw where I got to, where I was flawed for sure. And I also see for everyone, I'm going to say this to everyone, that everyone can heal all these parts of themselves. So I went on all those journeys that I also, nothing was helping me, nothing. They did to an extent, it did. And I'm going to say this part because I know this is a psychedelic podcast. Psychedelics not for everyone.
No.
I personally think that the plant medicines are here for those of us who want to actually really look at ourselves in a true mirror and we really want to do our work because it is not easy. So I chose the psychedelic path. It's a funny story. A friend who was on the path before me, her husband also betrayed her, and her trauma was worse than mine. And she just recognized me. She just recognized this woman is she's hiding something, and I can see it now. And that's what happens on a psychedelic when you're healing and you're healed enough. You can recognize people. You can recognize where they're stuck. And she just said, go to this woman, and it was an underground woman. And I didn't even want it. I didn't even want to know what it was, what I was going to do. I did my very first healing on healing, not my very first experience, but my very first healing experience was an MDMA journey. And then it went to psilocybin and then ayahuasca and then wachuma and then iboga, the whole thing. But and I'll say why I do this later. I don't think that everyone has to do everything either. And I did this and I realized I have never in my entire life, I had 2 kids, I'm an adult, I'm married, and I have never felt safe before. And the MDMA experience gave my body a sense of safety, a sense of love that I had never experienced, true unconditional love. And then I do go spiritual when I on any kind of psychedelic or enhanced healing experience. I went spiritual and I just saw the reason why I was here on this planet to experience these things. And it was to heal and to really understand that process of healing to get to transcendence. And so I think that psychedelics, I will say, were the plant medicines and psychedelics are were the game changer for me because my mind was very, very rigid and my mind was very, very, very strong in terms of I'm okay and I'm going to live in this box and I am not going to even breathe because if I take up too much space, people are going to notice who I am and I might get annihilated. And so I really needed something to break me out of that shell, and it doesn't help it's not in a cocoon if you open or an eggshell, if you open up the eggshell or the cocoon before that butterfly is ready, it is not that. Psychedelics is not that. Psychedelics actually helping you dissolve a little bit more so that you can remember who you are, so that your wings could start spreading as you use this healing tool to actually truly, truly heal.
Hey, fellow explorers. Thoughtful planning and preparation is the foundation of any successful psychedelic journey. And if something does go wrong, knowing how to navigate that difficult space is essential. That's why I wrote my psychedelic safety guide, including what to do when things go wrong. It's filled with tips and tools for keeping you and your friends as safe as possible. You'll find it at our website, psychedelicdivas.com. Please go get it, read it, and share it. The more we all know, the safer we can keep each other. Thanks.
I agree with everything you just said, and it's an amazing, beautiful journey you've been on, but there's one little thing that I would change, which is psychedelics in the wrong container, in the wrong dose, in the wrong setting can crack that shell open before it's ready and more trauma can be done. And instead of the wings being ready to fly, its vulnerabilities being attacked and just potentially more damage. You had the wisdom and the connection to land with the perfect person to start that so that it was the exact right, safe timing and you baked just the right amount within the right container with the right people and the right dose, all of those things. And that's why I'm doing this podcast is because all of these things matter and then you can have you can have these transformative experiences without all those things being aligned. That's when more harm can happen. And so
Yeah, thanks for that clarity.
yeah,
I was under the assumption that 2 psychedelic people are understanding that the container and the people on the other side of that on this other side of you who are supporting you have to be in highest integrity, and I 1000% agree with that. So I will clarify what I mean by the psychedelics help you dissolve in all of this. In all of this, I care so much about this particular part because women who have been abused, raped,
exactly. Yes.
exploited actually do trust a little bit more.
Mhm.
We should and are prone to manipulation, not because they're not smart and
No.
they don't get it. It's really, in my experience, if I have if you have a gaslighter in your midst and you have never, you just don't, all women who've ever been gaslit are like, whoa, I had no idea and I'm really smart. But there's this, I don't know what that game is called when you mush around the shells. There's a lot of that going on in the
Mm.
world today, and it's a learned way of communicating that is not transparent, that gives you
Mhm.
just the tiny elements of truth, but the rest of it, there's a lot of talking, and then so it sounds true, it sounds good, and but it's not. So,
Mhm.
1000% agree that we have to vet the person on the other side. And in my humble opinion, not all therapists are made equally.
No.
Not all underground facilitators are made equally, or shamans are made equally. I really encourage women to really got to waken up our intuition. It's very hard if you're unhealed. So this is a
Mhm.
road
Exactly.
we
Right.
have here. And to, if it feels wrong, it probably is wrong for you in certain ways. And
Right.
there is a delicate balance of like resistance, because I do know a lot of people, not just women, people who are really attached to their trauma and really like it and really and I was one of those people, really, that's who I am, this traumatized person. And so that's different from intuition. If we want, there's got to be this like really amazing balance between understanding that person is unsafe and I
Mhm.
really don't want to heal, so I'm not going down this road. And
Right.
delicate balance. What I hope to share with people, at least the people who come through Wonderland Project, is you are allowed to ask that person on the other side what their healing journey is. And if it resonates with you, amazing.
Mhm.
But I also like to, for me, this is now a personal experience. I don't sit with anyone who cannot hold something gigantic that might
Mhm.
explode out of my body, because I always say that I was raised by wolves, or that I had in my household this combination of the Incredible Hulk mixed with The Shining. And I feel bad because that's my dad, but that's what I felt like when I was growing up. And so there's fear for something a little bit scary, and then just rage that I have to protect my body from. And so I
And you
have
don't wanna have to protect the person you're sitting with.
exactly. And I have been in front of therapists, not psychedelic, but therapists. And the first time I was sharing my story, I felt like I was triggering them and thought, oh, let me tone myself down because
Mhm.
it's too much for them. And what is the point of holding space if you can't hold space? And so for me, I really do an assessment of what is their background, and it's not based on experience. It's like, what is your background? Like, how did you grow up? Is everything dandy? Because if it's great when everything's dandy, I have lots of girlfriends who their life is really beautiful, and if a something happens, they fall apart, and I'm like, I am you are safe in this situation. I am not safe if I need help. And lovely lives and lovely people and want to help, but in a dangerous situation, they freeze. And that's not something that I can have. And especially with some of the plant medicines, it's a little bit different with some medicines, but some of the plant medicines that allow us, which I like, allow us to be embodied, allow us
Mhm.
to express physically.
Absolutely.
Some of my journeys look really scary where everyone's, oh, that was so bad. I'm like, no, it was so cathartic. It was so amazing to get out this rage out of my body. And I look scary. I look like a monster. And I really appreciate some of the people that have held space that were just could hold space. And quite frankly, not all of that. Most of them weren't therapists. Most of them were like have been through the process, sat with medicines for a very, very long time and done their own work. So for me, it is about how much work that person has done on themselves, because I also see, and I also have been to therapists and facilitators that have left me alone to process, like just left me. And it was, I say that I'm so grateful that I had done enough work to go, wow, if I had not done enough work, I would be re traumatized here, sitting in this room by myself, sick to my stomach, and they're gone. And they, no follow up, no follow through. So, and those are pros. So it's an interesting time to, for women, I work with women, but also for the men or for anyone doing the work to really look inward and really have high integrity and think to yourself, because I do this every day, what is this for? Because if it's for ego, no, I don't want to do it anymore. If it's because we want to do something because we need to have a reason to have our business or whatever, it's people first and healing first, marinating in that healing, getting your body whole, and then it's awakening, and then it's sharing. Otherwise, if we skip any of those parts, then those blind spots can come in through our ego, which we got to check our egos every second of the day when we do this.
So I want to switch gears a little bit here because there's so much that we can talk about. But one of the things when we were on the phone earlier was it was clear that we shared a lot of common language about how we hold the divine feminine.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love to hear how you define the divine feminine and what ways does your work assist individuals in connecting with this energy?
Yes, thank you. The divine feminine, it's interesting because it is a very broad topic for lots of people. And I have been to a lot of different healing modalities where the divine feminine is defined in very specific ways. I like to have it more broad. So in the sexual healing area, it is, oh, divine feminine is to be your kundalini awakening, being sexual. And that's part of it. I believe that is part of it. And then we have the different archetypes of the divine feminine that we can embody, which I think is true as well. And then there's also the aspect of being vulnerable and receiving and collaborative. And that's all true too. The feminine that I have a little bit of a hard time with is the version that is submissive. Because there is that school of thought in some schools of thought where the feminine is submissive. And I feel like I embody a lot of divine feminine energy. And most of mine is very Kali-esque because I
One
had,
of my favorite goddesses.
yeah, and I had to. And and to be the destroyer and the creatrix is a power. And so to me, the divine feminine is an embodied, full spectrum woman who is courageous enough to live and embody her truth and also soft enough to hold others. And the masculine part of that would be just presence of being also. And how I see divine feminine is, if we're going to define it this way, consciousness being that infinite potential and holding of the everything, and creation being the divine feminine and the everything. The divine feminine to me is the everything. It's creation, it's destruction, it's the animated force. It is all of earth and all of existence on earth. So that's big and grand. And I think that it's very powerful. But I also think that is who we are. All humans in their existence and in their creation and their evolution are expressing the divine feminine, while consciousness is holding that space for us, the divine masculine.
You spoke about submission, and to me, that's a more of a patriarchy word for the receptive.
Mhm.
And so the feminine energies, the masculine it goes out, it's dynamic, and the feminine energy, we're not talking about gender, is receives, it's receptive, it brings in. So information comes in, it goes through intuition, the body, the knowing, and then an action happens, and that's the masculine energy, and it goes out. And so the left side is the receiving side, the right is the doing. So being versus doing would be that, just the energetics of that. But if you want to put the word submissive on it instead of soft or gentle, to me, that's coming in from a more of a patriarchal masculine perspective on the feminine, whereas there's like something's over her instead of everything being in balance. And so I think maybe that's why you're like, no, nothing's going to be over me.
Yeah. And
And
also,
nor should there be. That's what we're looking for, is to bring this back into balance because it's so out of balance right now in the world.
yeah, and I also think that words don't do any of this service. And as we dissect everything, it doesn't do any of its service, because I do think that creation is a feminine word. I think that creation,
Mhm.
as I birth things,
Yep.
that's an action as well. It's an action, it's an organic action, it's a primal action, it's instinctive. And so that's why for me, I like to use consciousness and creation, because creation is an act. And how I create is my act of feminine creation, and doing, if you will. And so it is, but it comes from a little more of a primal space. And yes, the word submission is not something that I like, but also I also think that this is where words come in. It's I like even softness. I in my fierceness, I still remain in my divine feminine.
Mhm.
That's how I feel it. And so I also feel like sometimes the words are a little bit, we can split hairs on words all day long, but if there's a presence, and then there's, yes, a presence and a holding presence and a movement presence. This is, I guess, how I
Yeah.
try to really distill it down.
So you're talking about birthing and creating. So one of the things that you've created is the Wonderland Project. So
Mhm.
can you share the inspiration behind the founding of the Wonderland Project? First of all, tell us more about it,
Yeah.
and then the inspiration of what led to creating it,
Yeah.
and then how psychedelic therapies have facilitated healing for marginalized women.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Wonderland Project is a nonprofit 501(c)(3) organization that connects marginalized women to plant medicine care. And our clients are women who survived domestic violence, rape, and sexual exploitation. I had a fundraiser at my house one time, and Rick Doblin was here. And he had said the people with the most PTSD are women who've experienced domestic violence and rape. And, but yet they chose to back veterans, and I think that's okay. I'm totally pro support of veterans.
An important choice and
Mm.
an expedient choice, but
Strategic, very strategic.
a good choice, a
Yeah, yeah,
strategic one.
yeah, very strategic. And I asked, why was that? Why do we exclude women from that? And he said, at the time when they're doing funding, people can't get their minds around the experience that women have like this. It's too close to home. Nobody really wants to think about that t-shirt that perhaps a trafficked human is working for, right? There's a lot of people so I hear, in Africa, children who are mining for batteries for the Teslas, right? So is in the big picture, do we really need to have that? I don't know. I don't think so. I feel like humanities should be at the top of our priorities. And so I understanding that this need is, we have women who have trauma and who are healed are an untapped resource to me. Resiliency, forgiveness, compassion. There's so much that they withstood. They've seen it all. And yet we're not their mothers. We're givers of life, nurturers, sustainers, and we don't give the honor of giving them access. And so this is also my journey. Like, I was on a journey and doing an ayahuasca journey. And I'm going to try to make this story a little bit shorter, but it's a very profound story. And I think a lot of people, these things happen to a lot of people. But I had experienced this. I was listening to all this noise. One girl was laughing, one man was laughing, and the girl sounded innocent and the man sounded sinister. I'm like, this might be my own stuff. I get that. And then I had just gotten rid of a lot of the rage, the aggressive rage that my father gifted me, and the passive aggressive rage that my ex-husband gave me that I perceived. And in exhaustion, I fell to the floor, and could see in my mind's eye a young little girl, and I knew immediately it was Alice. And then my head started spinning, and I thought, wow, this is so interesting. I'm in the teacups at Alice in
Mm.
Wonderland. And then all of a sudden she landed in my body, and instantly I felt that I was being drugged. And I know I was on a medicine, but I was being drugged and raped at the same time. And
Oof.
it was such an excruciating experience. I was calling all deities to come, please take her out of my body. And actually, deities came. And every time I tried to give her up, I felt guilty. Like, how can I give up
Ah,
such innocence? How can I give this person up and not take care of her? And in my mind, it takes lifetimes to heal this kind of wound where you're trusting somebody, but something's happening sexually, and you are drugging them, but so they're in and they're out. It's interestingly, I was like, I feel pleasure. However, I feel shame. It was such an
wow.
enormous I felt sick to my stomach, and then there was parts of me that felt pleasure, and I'm thinking, did this happen to me when I was younger? What is going on with me? And she kept saying, tell my story. And I kept
Mm-mm.
thinking, I am so not taken down Disney. I don't know how to do that. Like, if anyone out there wants to tell this part of the story, please do. And so I thought, okay, I don't really talk much at the end of these things, but I'm going to share it. And I shared it, and 4 different women came up to me, and 3 different men are like, that was for me, because I would
Mm.
not survive this if I didn't hear it through you. And that happened to me.
Wow.
And but it kept coming. The message kept coming to me, and to the point where I was so afraid to sit with the medicine again,
Yeah.
till I promised myself that I would do something about it. And I said, okay, this makes sense to me. I am going to help this. I'm going to help women. And mine is domestic violence. I did experience date rape. So that also, but I have never experienced being drugged, and that I know of, that hasn't come up yet, drugged and being raped by somebody that I knew. Just like that woman, that story in The Woman in France. That's the
Right.
story. It's sick. Um,
Horrendous.
it's horrendous. So, but when
And her voicing of it and how she handled it,
yes, amazing.
that's sainthood. That's
Absolutely. So I go home and I promise myself that I'm going to start something to help people get access to this. But then I also decided to look up what my vision was, because it was so real to me, and I didn't
mhm.
like, was way too real for me. So there are suggestions that Lewis Carroll, he ended up being in an insane asylum.
Mm.
And the Alice that he wrote about ended up committing suicide.
Huh.
And there are evidences that at 11 years old, he had pictures of her nude.
Oh,
Yeah. So, and I
okay.
didn't know any of this.
I know that, yeah.
Yeah, so crazy. And then there was a play in New York, and I missed it because I guess COVID happened and they had to shut it down.
Mhm.
There was a
Mhm.
play about this in New York that I had never heard of. So, and I wish they bring it back so I can see it. But they had it held in an insane asylum about this very thing that
Wow.
they're saying that he had drugged and raped her and her sister. So
Wow.
the real stories are very dark, not the Disney version of it. The real
Right.
stories are very dark. So if there's a producer out there who wants to tell this story, I was like, I kept thinking, how do I get Disney every single time somebody goes into the Alice in Wonderland area,
Right.
give a little bit of money towards these rape victims, because it's an exploitation in itself if they don't tell the true story. And
Mhm.
so that really sat with me. And as all of us in the psychedelic realm know, it's this phenomenon happens sometimes. We feel and we know things.
Mhm.
And it only works if we do the research after, because some things are fantastical.
Mhm. Mhm.
But also, if we take these lessons, however it was told to me, why it was told to me, I'm not sure. But I've now created something that is helping women. And it's women that have no voice. And it's something that people want to go like this, because it is really hard to hear that your parents hurt you, or it's even hard to admit, actually, or that there's stories of rape all the time and no one wants to hear it. And I get it. And I understand that completely. So I'm not on stages. I'm not talking about the policy or anything like that. I'm just doing my little work to have as many people come through as possible. But I also want to figure out how to make this a heroic experience, just like the veterans, because I didn't ask to be in the war zone and step on landmines, and I didn't have weapons of destruction that could actually protect me. I was 5. And so I think that we should have the same reverence and respect for some of the children and women, even adult women, who go through this without the camaraderie of brotherhood or sisterhood, and without backing from communities. We have nothing. And so I decided I was going to be that. As small as I am, I'm going to just do that. And hopefully, I do have people coming through, so it's amazing. But hopefully, it'll be that little seed that starts to create the stories of women survivors, survivor leaders that actually can share their stories and can actually do something, try to help in this, start the ball rolling, or start the
Well,
collaboration
just the conversation, the collaboration, but even just the conversation, which
conversation.
we're not even there.
We're not even there. And unfortunately, I think that a lot of the talk on policy and a lot of the talk on how do we create these spaces of healing, I don't know any survivor who's being asked to consult.
Hmm.
And like I said, I had been in
Mhm.
experience with licensed professionals
Mhm.
where I was like, you just left me, and that was wrong. And so like it's not, if I'm interested in the merging of spirituality and science, I'm also interested in the merging of ancestral wisdom and modern wisdom. And it's part of that is like merging what everything together and finding that very point of truth of how these things can be used, not should be used, can be used for
Mhm.
the people who need it most, and then for everyone. So that's how I started that.
First, I just wanna honor you got the message. It was a hard message to receive
Mm,
and clear at first. You then were like, "Okay, now I need to explore more." So you started to integrate
mm,
with curiosity and instead of just, "I don't know, that was weird, I'm not gonna touch that."
mhm.
And then you turned it into something so a full integration of the message, which really, that's so much of what's missing in the current world of psychedelics, I think, is that we're people are still putting the emphasis on the journey itself.
Yeah.
And when the bulk of the emphasis needs to be on integration, because if you don't integrate the messages, if you don't hear them, make the changes, listen to what they're telling you, then you're negating the entire, almost negating the entire experience. And in a lot of ways, you're actually being quite rude to your guides. So they're coming and they're like, okay, listen here, we want you to pay attention to this. You're like, no, I don't want to do that. Would you do that in front of an elder?
Right.
And when we don't do, and I have not, there's been messages I was like, "Oh, I don't wanna do that." And I was taught and trained to do better about that, and so I really wanna acknowledge that you
Thank
did that
Yeah.
and call that out.
Mhm.
So
It's
the one
important. Yeah.
it's the most important.
I
So
think
the
that
one Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was just gonna complete the sentence of integration. I did some studying on integration,
Mhm.
and you're right, a lot of the things that I had been to, the reason why I started I need to learn how to do the integration piece. I was doing it on my own because no one was giving me integration. And then I
Right.
do a course on integration, but then I really, for me, this is what I think that is was helpful for me. It is integration as an act of creation because it's each person who's doing an experience, all these visions or knowledge or wisdom that's coming through is coming through to you and you alone.
Right.
And
It is very personal, yes.
very personal and it's coming for a reason. And a lot of people go, "Oh, I see the same things over and over." I'm like, that's because you have not done the integration piece. You've got to, if the same message is coming and you haven't integrated, stop for a moment, stop for a long time and do that piece. And I say the act of creation, again, it's a divine
Mm.
feminine, is because we can think about it and we can journal it and we can do all the things that therapy does and talk about it.
Mhm.
But until we truly embody it, then it's not integrated. And embodying is we got to create something through it. That's how I see it. Whether it is creating a better relationship with your parents, forgiveness, I'm creating that process of how am I gonna forgive? Do I
Mhm.
actually say
Yes.
something? Do I write a letter?
Right.
Do I just do it internally? This is my piece. I need to forgive. And I do believe in the profound effects of forgiveness. And I have to make promises to myself that I will never do X, Y, and Z to this person because I feel their pain too. That is one of the beautiful things that I got actually from my journeys, which is I did have to do healing with my parents and my ex, and I just had to say I got to see the pain and realize where that's coming from so
Mhm.
that I was set free from it. And then I did some beautiful things to make sure that you have boundaries, but you have forgiveness and you have compassion and you had like, I don't even need forgiveness. I understand I understand the purpose of this whole thing, and thank you, because I don't would never know myself unless I had to unless myself was non-existent at one point. I had to go find her, and I found her. And so, yeah, integration is the most important thing to me. Otherwise, you're just having an experience. Otherwise,
Right.
you're just
Yeah.
having fun, which is okay
Right.
too,
Or
but if
having fun or not having fun.
yeah, or not. The hard part is if you're having because I all of my experiences at the beginning would have been considered a really bad trip, every single one of them, and at the very beginning, and
Mhm.
I'm talking a lot of them, and I came to realize this is it. I am doing some really hard work, and what a
Mhm.
gift I got to see. I got to do that. So when if I tap in now, it's a little bit of a different story, and I'm always humbled, and I'm always do it through humility and gratitude, but it's not as horrific as it was originally.
I think that's part of that switch that you talked about from the privilege of being on a healing journey rather than just a trauma journey. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I wanted to talk about a little bit more about the Wonderland Project because it really emphasizes sacred reciprocity. So how do you
Mhm.
ensure that the use of plant medicines honors and supports indigenous cultures and wisdom keepers?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question, and I'm thinking I for thank you for bringing it up. What I try to do is I try to if I'm giving someone a scholarship to go to do ayahuasca, I will guide them towards a retreat center that I feel like is doing the right work, but I'll also honor, like, pay for a local person to go do it there, but also do a donation for their community. I went down to Brazil and got to sit with the Huniquin tribe, and they are doing a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful work on trying to have the women become leaders, which I
Mm,
and
yeah.
so Wonderland Project, we brought a couple of people down. We helped them build the community center
Mhm.
and it was all the women's work that we supported in a healing hut. And so I feel great about that because I went down and I did the medicine through them and we're helping them be sustainable to bring other
Mhm.
back. And then we take people to Jamaica because it's legal there and I want to do everything above board. And when I go to Jamaica, we stay with the Rastafari village and they are local Jamaicans, and so when we stay with them, they get our dollars, and they are the ones who have gotten plant medicine legal in Jamaica. And so I feel and we also encourage a local woman to join us, and yeah, they get I'm not renting an Airbnb or a hotel that isn't even owned by a Jamaican. I am giving it to the community, and they live off the land, and so I feel very good about incorporating their philosophy of Ital, like a vital life. And so we're sharing and we're really sharing in community and we're living amongst the villagers and the women that we bring in over they get to learn how they live on the land and they get to learn their customs and I always teach give back and generosity. I'm like,
Mhm.
this is how we are abundant. This is how we heal is if we give back. And so that's how I do it right now. And and then when I do that, when I curate something, I'm not going to curate it from a person's point of view that is a Western point of view. I'm going to do it from the indigenous point of view. And that's how I've been doing it is what do you need and how would you like it? And then I will try to support that versus a bunch of and I'm not judging this, it's just not the way I'm gonna do it. Some facilitators who wanna be facilitators who aren't raised in the lineage and go and that's not where that's not my role. My role is to really
Mhm.
try to bridge it all together. And so I feel great about it. And I'm always open to learning more and to improving because this is the wild, wild west as we merge. It's not the wild, wild west for indigenous communities, but as we merge and the global north learns how to do better, I think that's really, I think we need to do better. I'm always open to improving, doing better and learning.
Amen, because we have a long way to go, I think, in
Yeah.
terms of, the things that we have stepped over and and, well, colonized and then rejected and ignored, and now we're suddenly just now waking up to, "Oh, wait, there might be value here, so let's co-opt it." So there's so many ways to do better. So I appreciate that language. It's an ongoing process of
Yeah.
always doing better.
Someone wrote to me, like, because I had posted something that, "Yay, Oprah interviewed
Right.
Michael Pollan," and they had written, "But now it's gonna be colonialization." I thought, aren't we already?" But the reason why I thought it was good is not because I hope we do better in terms of appropriation and really giving back to communities and using their wisdom, because the wisdom of the plant medicines and the shamans is great wisdom. It's been
Hmm.
here for a long time and we're forgetting how to be human. But I thought it was great for personally and the women that I serve, because the stigma that women hold for
Hmm.
is lessened by someone like an Oprah who says
Hmm.
maybe there's this other thing called psychedelics. And so from that point of view, I really feel like it's a good thing, and then hoping that we do it right and we do it with reverence. And so it just brought up for me, and as we fine tune our language, is that there's such nuances in this field. There's such nuances, and I have the assumption that everyone's in integrity. That's my assumption, and it's not. That
It's not true, but I love it. It's a beautiful assumption.
Yeah,
And
and
yeah.
I wish for that to be.
Yes, exactly.
And I wish that a lot of people try to get information from different avenues. And so then my language isn't always as precise as I think it needs to be. So I thank you for that. It needs to be precise because not everyone comes from the same background. And this gentleman that wrote this, yes, I absolutely 1,000% agree with you that we need to be like appropriations happening 1,000%. And it helps women in this field get it destigmatizes this healing journey too. So
I mean, for just in terms of destigmatizing that interview is something I can show my mother.
yes,
And that's actually that I think that interview is any mother can be shown that.
yeah, yeah, I think it's
And that really goes a long way towards helping those of us in the psychedelic community who have been here for a long time, and we understand the power of it. But
mm,
there's still a lot of stigma and fear and misinformation, and that's I don't want to acknowledge all that. That's why I'm doing this podcast.
yeah, thank
But
you.
there is something about the voice of Oprah that's very comforting.
Yeah, yeah.
And oh, okay, it must be okay.
Mm. And
And
also
I value that.
and her curiosity hopefully
Mhm,
as people get curious. And I think that's a word that I'd like to have be a staple in the psychedelic realm, or when people
mhm,
are like even
mhm.
trying to learn about it, is always stay curious, because in our journeys, we have to remain curious,
Right.
discover what this meaning is. And if it's hard, discover, ask, be curious. And when we're learning, be curious, continue to be curious, because that's how we learn more and that's how we get to the truth. And so her curiosity
Yeah.
is a beautiful way to
Yeah.
keep
And
conversation.
that is really what she does. That's that open, curious, "I don't know, I've learned, I've researched, but explain it to me in such a way that we can all understand it."
Mm,
And so, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of value, I think, that does come from that.
yeah,
So, yay, good for Michael Pollan.
yeah.
And good for Oprah. Let's not step over the fact that in the '80s, I think it was the '80s, when the National Institute of Health under George Riccardi was misrepresenting MDMA as being exceptionally dangerous and creating holes in your brain. And
Mhm,
on the Oprah show, they showed here are the brains with the
mm,
holes in them,
mm,
and that research was thoroughly debunked and actually should have had gotten a lot more information, a lot more media than it did, because he was using methamphetamine instead of MDMA.
right.
And maybe that was supposed to be a lab mislabeling, but he was working for the National Institute of Health, and I pretty much everybody in the psychedelic world felt like he was giving the government what they wanted in the '80s, the just say no, I think it was the '80s, just say no time period of this is bad. And of course, if so the dosing was way too high on the methamphetamine, it was
Yeah.
creating massive damage in the monkeys. But
Mhm,
we all who were on the dance floor in the
mhm,
'80s and the '90s dancing and re-upping on MDMA all night long, nobody was dropping
yeah,
dead.
yeah,
So we're like, we knew something was wrong. So
Yeah.
I really honor that Oprah, that's a massive 180 of taking and she talks about that, I think, in the interview, but she's that there was the harm of that earlier misinformation.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, I guess, back to our first talk on having integrity and feeling into our intuition as women and this podcast, understanding you've been on this road for a long time, probably longer than I have, and really having that experience as wisdom versus sometimes reading a couple of books doesn't help going even to some of it I'll ask researchers and they'll go, "Yeah, I have tried it." I'll ask every researcher that's doing some work
Right.
going, "Have you done this medicine?"
Uh-huh.
Because yay you for researching, but really
Right.
the real work is the
Yeah,
experience. And
exactly.
what we're trying to do for people who need it is to help them feel safe through people who've experienced it or researching it or trying to make
Yes.
things better. So I want to know there's very few people of color. My parents were not wealthy and I had scrambled through life. There's not very many people that I can go, oh yeah, your experience is like mine. There's
Mhm.
not. So I don't trust it because the people who have had everything, I think it's a beautiful thing, but you really don't know what I have gone through. You just don't, and
No.
that's amazing. I respect that, how you
Yeah.
help me for you, but then I think that's why it's kind of a little bit difficult for the women who have had extreme experiences to step in the door because they just don't feel safe. They don't people lie, don't have different experiences, and
Yeah.
it's just and
Yep.
so as much as I can share my own story with people, I hope it helps. I just hope it helps. And I don't have a picture to show how I do have a picture actually when I was a little kid. I should put that up where I was like, I think I was like very young and I was just so rigid and that's how I had to be because I would have gone in trouble. And I don't feel that I don't know. I feel so much freedom in my body and so much self-sovereignty that I
And
hope
that is an
for
amazing
everybody.
gift.
Yes, that's a gift.
That is an amazing gift.
Mhm.
So speaking of that, so you created the eating experience to represent that, I think, on one level. So tell us about the eating
Yeah.
experience and what
Yeah.
that does. And
Yeah, I'm an artist, and my art comes through, and we're all artists. I'm just going to say that because I think that it's hard for people to admit to their artistry, but we're all creating. You created a podcast. You create a life at home that is beautiful. So artistry to me is the act of creating, and we've all got that. And so my art has to do with emotion and pain. And my gift to this world is trying to create beauty out of things that people don't think are beautiful, which is our trauma. And so, as a photographer, I photograph women and I photograph them in like, if they've done an experience, I always want to know what their psychedelic experience is and what they've seen. And then I will try to photograph them in their full range of expression of that particular emotion that they're trying to deal with or that archetype or what trauma they've had. And it's artistic. It's usually naked and nude. And the reason why it's the raw, naked truth and the reclamation. When I say eat and experience, it's the reclamation of our paradise, our bodies, our sovereignty through this art that no one else can see. It's not for the male gaze. It's not for sale. It's for women. And oftentimes the women who I work with say, if they're in a partnership, they say, can you teach my partner how to witness me like this with zero transaction, just witnessing. And then when they see this beautiful picture, they get to see themselves in a way that they
mm,
get to reclaim their sexuality, they get to reclaim their rage, they get to reclaim the pieces of them that were shamed. And so that is a photographic journey of healing. I'm hoping to create, and I'll let y'all know later, but I'm hoping to create a coffee table book
mm,
through with the pictures
wow.
because they're gorgeous. It's raw and primal and real, and we've all seen artistic nudes, and they're artistic, so it's not nudes. It's art, and it just happens to be of the female body and her emotion, and usually her emotion through rage and pain and grief and sorrow and loss. And i- because of that truth of who we are and what we've experienced, it's very magnetic But then when you open the book or you see a picture, you actually have the story from healing from trauma to transcendence. So that I want to flip over this rape culture, this idea that women can be sold, their bodies can be sold. We can use them for bra ads, beauty creams. We are being sold. And so if you're going to be attracted to that vision of a woman's figure and her body, you have to know her story too.
Mm.
And that's where I come from. And sometimes I will right now I'm tearing up the photographs and I'm putting them back together with the gold leaf.
Mm.
And it's,
Yes, the kintsugi from the
yes, yeah,
Japanese tradition. I love
exactly.
that.
And I am borrowing it
Beautiful.
from them because that's how I feel. I feel like
Yeah.
we, instead of looking at our broken pieces as something to throw away, let's put ourselves back together with gold and
Yes.
be magnificent, because every single woman that's listening to this who has pain, you are magnificent. You are glorious. And just one person needs to witness it, and that person is you. And then you begin that process of reclamation and then embodiment, and there's no stopping you.
Mhm. All right. I love it. That's perfect. Last question.
Mhm.
So big, but go wherever you want with it. So what are your hopes and or fears for the future of psychedelics within the mainstream therapeutic practices, especially concerning women's healing and empowerment?
Yeah. Okay, so this is big. It really truly is a big thing. I could easily say, "Oh, I'd love to have the emergence and have the nugget of truth," like I said before. However, and I could say, "I'd like plant medicine to be decriminalized, like this is nature." I would love education for every person to be free. I would like people to have
Hmm.
absolute free education on what every medicine does and what the pitfalls and the healing potential there is, that it's not hard to find. And it's not just told by the therapists that went to the blossoming new psychedelic schools that are coming up because it's monetary, like there's money involved. Everyone should have access to this because everyone should have access to plants as they grow it themselves. But I think every woman and every person should have access to education for free, and a balanced education, so that if you are that person who wants to go to a therapist, yes, great, amazing. If you are that person who realizes that if you're doing emotionality, which is a lot of us, it's about the emotionality of loss or grief. A lot of our healing is about that. The person who's going to hold space for you is not necessarily somebody who's gone and done all this mind education. It's somebody who is embodied and can hold space for you. So I'd love to see options of where you can access any of these things. And I would like for the psychedelic realm to be about people first and not profits. It is a sad thing to me that there's so much money being put into the psychedelic compounds that mimic the plant medicines. Plants are alive, they have alkaloids, they have a spirit, and we are creating something for the mass market. And last I checked, some of these things that were created in the pharmaceutical companies actually are super addictive and harmful for human beings. And so we have nature. She's here. She has gifted us this beautiful medicine, and we are taking a different approach to it, a patriarchal approach to it. And I actually would like to see the field of psychedelics less patriarchal, because it's, yeah,
That's why I'm doing the podcast.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, really. So, it's how is interesting because we can't demonize anybody. We just got to make the case for a more inclusive, better, juicier version of how we see these medicines. And to me, whenever I do a plant medicine, at least, I really do get a feminine wisdom, a divine feminine wisdom. And so I would love for more women to be on platforms and hearing their voices from a place of true sovereignty and embodiment, because I know that sometimes women are actually fighting for a place too. And I don't want there to be a fighting for a place. I wanted them to be a banquet table, a feast where we all sit together and we all feast on love, feast on beauty, feast on transcendence. My
I
joy.
am 100% agreement, and I'm doing my small part by
Ah,
creating this place for us to have these conversations
yes.
and to do my part in bringing about that rebalancing. So it's certainly it's for me, it's not none of this is really gendered. It's about the feminine energies, but because the feminine energies are so not respected right now, I'm pulling hard on the gender. So it's I'm only interviewing women for right now, and eventually there'll be some men invited to the table. But I'm so appreciative of your time and really want to thank you for your own commitment to the divine feminine and to your healing journey, and then taking that beautiful healing journey and working to offer it to so many who would never have access to it, and creating the kind of safe container that they need so that they can do that transformation and spread their wings. So thank you, Coltrane, for that beautiful work
Thank you. Thank you so much for your work and spreading the good news and spreading love because we need it now. And truth. I'm going to say that too. And
and
truth.
truth.
So thank you. Appreciate you
My
so much.
pleasure. I want to thank you all for listening and for your support. And of course, if you found this conversation entertaining or helpful or useful in any way, we'd love for you to share it. And also, just I know you're multitasking because that's the only way I listen to podcasts. But if you could just take a moment and stop doing the dishes. If you're driving, don't stop. But if you could go to wherever you're listening or watching and click on the 5 stars, or maybe even provide a nice comment or a thumbs up if you're on YouTube. This feedback is how we spread the word, and it's so important to put helpful, safe information about psychedelics out into the world. So thank you for helping us with that. And speaking of safety, I'm always talking about my safety guide, but it's worthwhile, y'all, and you don't want to be scrambling for it when something has already gone wrong. So if you go to the website psychedelicdivas.com, you'll be able to, yes, you have to share your email address, but I don't email very often because I hate email. So you can exchange your email address for the safety guide. And it really might be just the thing you need when things go sideways. And so please take a moment to do that as well. And then finally, Coltrane's not expecting this, but as we end here, rather than you seeing our smiling faces, I'm going to invite Coltrane to take off her video, and I'm going to take off my video because you'll see our photos are actually very cute and aligned. So let's say, if you do you mind, Coltrane?
Oh, no, no. I'll do.
Okay, good. So we'll say goodbye, and all right, thank you all for listening. Okay, perfect.